Hello, my young theologians and philosophers. You may be watching this with some mock exams coming up. You might be watching this revising for the summer exams. I am sat here on the day when it's super snowy in England, taking advantage of a few moments to record this to you. So I thought I would be in an appropriate attire for you, although I'm quite warm near the fire. So this I wanted to talk to you about today is about answering the question, which I guess is what you do all the time when you're doing an exam. But really, it's about answering the specifics of the question, because sometimes it can make the difference how you answer the question as to what the wording is in particular. Not just the topic, but the wording of what they're actually asking you to do in the question that they're asking you. And for this, I'm going to stretch an analogy, perhaps too far, but here we go, that I like to use about good essays being a bit like a washing line. And so those of you who I've had sessions with will know I use this idea of a washing line, which has got two poles, one on either end, which is holding up the line, and then you've got your clothes drying on there. And so for me, I've got here the introduction and the conclusion, which is holding up your line of argument running all the way through your essay. And I'll do a separate video talking more about that for you. But this idea that one line sort of runs through what you are arguing, runs through your whole essay. So we could sort of say that those clothes are sort of hung on that line. And the way that we phrase they're the paragraphs and the points that we're making to back up our line of argument. And I'm going to introduce my dolly pegs here to us today, just to stretch that analogy a little bit further. So a level 6 essay. So maybe you're getting these, maybe you're aiming for them, maybe it's just good to see, okay, what is the top thing that the examiners are looking for? And you know that this paper is split between AO1 and AO2 content, AO2 being 60% of the marks. But you're not going to get those marks really if you haven't got a good grounding in the AO1 as well. So we have to focus on both for our revision and our essay planning. So for AO1, the top level, level 6, has here, good knowledge and understanding. And then what I've highlighted in yellow is here, fully comprehends the demands of and focuses on the question throughout. So you have seen the question and you've fully understood what the different demands are, what the specific thing is that it's asking for. And it also says here, highly accurate and detailed knowledge, and it's nuanced. So you're showing that sort of like slightly subtle, or sometimes one thing can kind of shift and change the meaning of something or the focus of something, which we'll get to more with AO2 as well. So if you look down at AO2 here, where 60% of the marks, I've got all the things about good arguments, a line of argument running through, and then here, answers the question set precisely throughout. So there's something about it being the precise question that's set. And so that's what you really need to show, that you've seen that. So it's not the question that you've revised. Lots of you are so good at revising, like questions that we've given you, and you map out what you would say, and you have your plans, and you've revised that, and then you might open the paper, and it's not phrased in exactly the same way. Now, do I just do what I revised on that topic and put that essay down there? What they really want to see in the exam is that you can take all that knowledge and information and really tailor it to that precise question. And you might find this in other subjects that you're doing as well. So it's not just what you know about the topic, it is also how can you apply all of that you know about the topic, because I know so many of you work so hard, to the specifics of the question in front of you. And it's sort of like really how they're kind of going to try and sift out between really good essays and really, really, really good essays. So here's an example so I can show you. What would be the difference between natural moral law provides a reasonable method for moral decision-making, and natural moral law provides a practical method for moral decision-making? I think you can spot the difference here between the two of them. It's this word reasonable and practical. So yes, they're both ethics essays. Yes, they're both about natural moral law, but this word here might shift slightly what you write about. So the top one, I'd be writing about, I suppose, the reasons behind the theory of natural moral law. I might talk about, is it coherent? Does it make sense? Is it something, does it match with our ideas? And how does it fit together? Is it something sensible? You think about sense being how we can sort of understand something. Whereas the second question is asking more about how it might be applied. So does it work in the real world? Is it practical? Is it usable? Okay, it might make sense theoretically, but how is it practically? So in your essay, you'd want to use these words rather than just saying strengths of natural moral law, weaknesses. You want to link it back to that question. So I do that a lot with my mentees, don't we? We look at, okay, let's use that precise wording. What is it that makes it practical or not work in the real world? Now, with the ethics paper, you might get those questions quite a bit. Sometimes they ask for helpful, practical, is it usable? Because that's what ethics is really, isn't it? It's supposed to be helping you work out what to do in a specific situation. So that's one thing to look out for there. You can see the difference in emphasis, I guess, that you would put in your essay on your argument. I've got a second example here from philosophy. Plato's view of the soul is more coherent than Aristotle's, compared to Plato's view of the soul is more believable than Aristotle's. So again, here you might have a slight difference. So coherent meaning, does it fit together? Is it logical? Is it, if you think about all the kind of ideas of logic and things making sense in philosophy and having reasons to back up your arguments and evidence, and does it fit together? Whereas the second one might be, is it something that people are more likely to believe, more likely to understand and want to, agree with him that that's how it is? You might have similar points, but how are you showing that slight difference about whether it's more believable or is it more coherent? And finally, one from Islam. The revelation of the Quran should be remembered in everyday ritual, or the revelation of the Quran should be remembered by Muslim communities. So again, same topic, it's talking about the revelation of the Quran. How do people remember it and the importance of it to Muslims today? But one is asking about perhaps that kind of everyday ritual that people will do, perhaps in communities, also as individuals. The second one is more focusing on what communities might do. So again, here you've got that slight difference, which could make the difference of how you answer your question. So I'm going to call these my Dolly phrases. I'm giving a little homage to my grandmother, who's no longer with us, whose name was Dolly. So everyone called her Peggy because of Dolly pegs. So I remember her being Nanny Peg. So I'm going to call these the Dolly phrase, because these are some pegs that would help you put those points that you want to make about the topic onto your line of argument. And you want it to be the precise thing that the question is asking you for. So I'm going to call that the Dolly phrase. They're not really the topic. They're not the command of evaluate or assess. They're a word that is the kind of the specific thing that they want you to really go in for about that theory. It's because if you remember, AO2 is so much about evaluation. It is evaluation, sorry, and it's 60% of your mark. And so they want to see that you can really tailor the points that you know to the argument you're making, specifically to that question, rather than the topic as a whole. So here we've got, I've got 9 more examples for you. So you might like to pause the video and just jot down the words that you think, or perhaps your teacher's printed this off for you. Have a think about which ones are the Dolly phrases in here. What are the specific things it's asking you? Not just the topic and what you have to do, like assess, evaluate and everything. What's the specific part of that topic or the way it wants you to argue it? What's the Dolly phrase in here? So maybe you've picked out here phrases like corporate social responsibilities are less reliable than individual ones. So again, religious experience, but what does it mean to say it's reliable? What does it mean to say that it's believable or it's more likely to be true or not? Assess the view that natural law is of no help with regard to the issue of euthanasia. So here this is to do with it being helpful, perhaps practical, useful in the real world. Is it something that can actually be used today by people in the real world? Remember, that might come up quite a bit with the ethics questions about things being helpful and, practical, applicable to real life situations. Here we've got Plato's view of the soul is more coherent than Aristotle. So this idea of it being coherent and logical. On the left, in the middle row, we've got critically assess the impact of modern feminism on attitudes towards the hijab. So rather than just giving what are the attitudes in modern feminism on the hijab, which you could be asked, it's asking what the impact is of modern feminism. So you need to know what the views are, but you also be able to say, has that had an impact on how people see the hijab? Assess the view that women were of little importance in early Islam. So for that, you might not talk about whether they were there, whether they were part of early Islam, but what was their importance and their significance? Here we've got Kantian ethics being a useful approach to whistleblowing than utilitarianism. So this is about the usefulness of the ethical theory. Again, something practical. And at the bottom, you've got 3 more here about being specific to the part of the course. So the world was created by chance, not by God's design. That you may look at that and think, oh, is that cosmological? No, design, that's teleological. So you have to think of the specific part of the topic the question is asking you for. And again, here we've got help and importance as well as some of those dolly phrases. So really, my tip for you in an exam setting or situation is to not only think about your question and highlight the key content, but also have a different color or underline what the dolly word is. What's the specific thing they're asking you to do with that topic? So you can have it all nicely tied to your wonderful essay hanging up like a washing line in the glorious sunshine, which you may or may not have today. Okay, bye-bye.